Welcome to the fourth and final session in Public Speaking Extraordinaire. I will recap everything you have learned in the last three sessions and how you can put them together to create a compelling speech on almost every occasion that demands it. This module alone could have been sold as a standalone, for the secret techniques I am about to reveal are being used by top salespeople, businessmen, and great leaders alike to compel and move audiences to the tune of persuasion. How would you like to get that kind of mastery in the next few minutes? Compelling your audience to answer to your call of action is what separates you from the rest of the average and mediocre public speakers. This is what separates highly successful speakers from the rest. Surely you are not going to climb the stage to speak to a large audience and expect nothing in return. Remember, there is no use to your speech without any call to action. In this section, you will learn things that can make a massive difference to what you already know from the first three sessions. One of the keys to a really successful presentation is audience participation. By making the audience involved in the presentation, it helps them to focus and relate better to the material, thereby encouraging them to take action after the session. Your role as a speaker is not just to convey a message, but also to be a quasi-facilitator as well. The fastest and simplest way to stimulate audience participation is to have an icebreaker in the start of the session. Icebreakers are especially useful in long seminars and can also be used in shorter presentations, depending on the time allowance. How to involve your audience. If you want to elevate the energy level in the room, engage the participants. Get them involved by turning their passive attention into active attention. Start by asking the audience to stand up and introduce themselves and tell everyone why they're attending this talk. If time allows, get audience members to introduce other members to stimulate audience interaction. You can also ask the audience members to write down their names on folded cardboards so you can call on them later on during the session. Having dyads or group activities encouraged. You are getting participants involved and they will gladly do so, since the reason they came to listen to you is with their own self-interest in mind. Conduct simple exercises involving dyads. If the room is evenly numbered, or break into smaller groups if the participant count is large enough to warrant so. You can also take some time and divide your audience into groups. Small groups, partner groups, or groups involving everyone for different activities. Small groups can further elect a leader to represent them and voice their thoughts. If you know anything about hypnotherapy, then closed-eyed procedures are useful too. Get participants to imagine, be creative, and see your vision. Another method is to do an audience survey by a show of hands. Not only would this help you find out more about your audience, it gets them involved in the sessions. What should you do when things are getting a little dull, especially in long sessions? Don't hesitate to command the room to stand up and do brisk warm-up exercises. Alternatively, a nice cat stretch or deep breathing exercises would help replenish the energy of the room. When dealing with large audiences and you wish to gather input from them, you can use the Ben Franklin close. To do that, draw a large T on a white sheet of paper. The T divides the paper into two sides. Examples are pros and cons, and get your audience to shout out ideas while you write them down. Further tips on how to deliver high-impact presentations. You have already done the 3-day program to go from zero to hero in public speaking, but there will always be room for improvement. Remember that speeches are best kept as short and concise as possible. If you are allowed to dictate how long you can speak, it is best to keep your speech between 15 to 30 minutes, though there is no hard and fast rule on length of time. There are great speeches ranging from just 5 minutes to even 5-day seminars. Regardless of how long or short your speech is, always stick to the core message, and it's worth repeating every once in a while. However, don't get over repetitive with key points. Incorporating real, relevant stories, especially if the story is something you have personally experienced, supports your message stronger. Lastly, always get your audience involved. Everyone is selfish to an extent, and everyone has their own personal interests. To make a great presentation really successful, a big part comes from how you interact with your audience, and also how you deal with various personality temperaments. Answering questions from your audience helps you to build trust and establish your credibility as an expert in your field. As discussed briefly in session 3, it is ideal to save the last 5 to 10 minutes of your speech for questions and answers. This is so no member of the audience interrupts your flow of speech or derails you from your original presentation. During the Q&A session, it is important that you keep your cool, stay credible, and be in control. As a general rule of thumb for dealing with questions, listen to the question, answer it, and bridge it to your agenda. Repeat the question clearly so others can hear you. This also gives you time to select your thoughts before answering. Maintain eye contact with the person asking the question, give a brief response, and move on to the next question. Also, avoid pointing a finger when selecting a member from the floor. When selecting audience, be sure to point using your palm face upwards or thumb, and not by your finger to avoid offending anyone. You can also collect questions during the break to give you time to prepare for the answers. Here's another tip. To tackle embarrassing moments with audience members who are less sociable, pre-select your volunteers to give them time to prepare. In the case when no one responds to a question, be prepared to answer it yourself. A good way to go by this is to offer gifts for participating or a secret gift. When dealing with a question unrelated to your topic, politely explain why you are not covering that question in this subject. If time is running out, it is fine to apologize for the lack of time. Whatever you do not exceed the time limit. When faced with an argumentative question, answer it quickly and move on. Certain people will try and force you into a debate, which is time consuming. You can avoid these verbal traps by rephrasing the question and then moving on to the next. If you aren't sure of the answer, explain that you will be happy to discuss the question later on after the session, or tell them that you will gather the information and get back to them. You can also offer the question to other members of the audience. It is wise to acknowledge from the start of the session the differing opinions and controversy that may arise. A huge part of your public speaking success is in how you deal with people of varied personalities, so it pays to survey your audience in advance. Survey your audience before you walk into the room or doing a presentation. If you are giving a talk to the board of directors of a big company, you will want to do some background research of your audience and their company profile. By knowing the characteristics of the people you will be dealing with, you will be able to tailor your presentation to the audience. If you don't have the luxury of surveying, you can briefly gauge their level of expertise or understanding by prompting them with some easy questions related to your subject. Be sure to answer for them in a rhetoric manner to avoid embarrassment. This is especially important in a technical presentation, as the level of awareness of the audience would affect how you want to give your presentation. If your presentation is too technical for laymen, then they will most likely phase off midway. This is the final section that completes and wraps up the entire Public Speaking Extraordinaire course. If you are a salesperson, entrepreneur, or promoter, you must master the art of back-end selling. This is what separates the profitable speakers from the broke ones. If you attend any seminars, especially self-improvement and wealth creation ones, you will have witnessed this selling tactic before. Set aside the final 15 minutes of your speech, not including your Q&A we have just discussed earlier, on pitching your back-end product. This is the ideal time frame, though it is less effective if you spend less time. As a school of thought, your back-end product must be relevant to your topic, or rather, the solution provides an excellent follow-up solution that your audience had listened to in your speech, but prefers an easier solution and thus the call to action. For instance, if your presentation or speech is about women's seduction, you can pitch in a back-end offer on personal one-on-one coaching with your top pickup artists. At this point, the audience who are now your prospects can choose to do it themselves or take an easier solution, which is to be trained by a professional in the area of women's seduction. Use PowerPoint presentations to demonstrate your offer components and their values. Alternatively, you can use a whiteboard and list down the components impromptu. This is what some top speakers like multimillionaire speaker T. Harv Eker and world's #1 affiliate marketer Ewan Cha does. Implement the price slashing tactic. This is a highly powerful psychological tactic to increase the perceived value of your offer before you drop the bomb and reveal the final price, which at this point will be perceived as an irresistible offer. For instance, again, you can name the value of your components to total up to $20,000 in real-world value. Then announce that your competitors are selling the same offer for $5,000. You will do so at half price, but only for the first 10 fast action takers. They can get a premium discount of just $1,000. Can you see how this tactic is effective? Giving people the perception of purchasing a $20,000 value back-end program for just $1,000. This also includes the scarcity tactic, whereby your offer is not just for anyone. People in general don't like the idea of being left out, and you want to attract only quality customers, so it's a win-win. This concludes the Public Speaking Extraordinaire Speed course. I hope you have learned a great deal about public speaking and apply them to your business, career, and even in your daily conversations. Empower yourself to make the next personal breakthrough, and it is my sincere wish to see you become a person better and more powerful than yesterday. All the best.